We crossed the same stage that day, same satin gowns, same practiced smiles for the camera. From the seats, it probably looked like symmetry. Two sisters finishing together, perfect in their matching caps. But mine hid something colder. My parents had paid every dollar of Hannah's tuition. I worked nights to keep pace with my own. When I asked about it once, Mom didn't even look up as she said, "She deserved it." You didn't. I memorized the shape of those words and the way they landed. They never left, they came to our graduation anyway. Front row, hands folded, the picture of pride. I could see my mother's pearl earrings from the stage lights. I could see the way my dad sat up straighter whenever the dean said a student's name with a little flourish. And when mine came and the crowd rose and the citation mentioned without financial support from her family, I watched the color flush up my mother's neck. The applause sounded like it came from far away. The quiet inside me was louder. From the outside, our family always passed as lovely, matching Christmas sweaters, neat smiles in every photo, a two-story colonial with white shutters and a lawn Dad trimmed on Saturdays. Look closer and you could see it. The way my mother's hand found Hannah's shoulder in pictures and never mine. The way my father's voice softened when Hannah spoke, like he had been waiting to hear her all day. We were twins, 4 minutes apart, 4 minutes stretched into miles. When we were kids, Hannah sniffled and Mom dropped everything. Oh, my poor baby. When I fell and skinned both knees, Mom pressed a napkin into my palm and said, "You're strong, Camille, you'll be fine." On one birthday, Hannah got a gleaming new bike. I got her old one, spray-painted silver. When she forgot homework, there was a note to excuse her. When I forgot mine, I got a long speech on responsibility and the dignity of self-reliance. Little cuts, no bandages. By high school, I stopped competing. I studied in the quiet and worked after class at a cafe that smelled like burnt espresso and sugar. I saved every tip in an envelope I hid under socks. Hannah's weekends were mall photos and dress try-ons. She held up price tags and watched my face the way a cat watches a window. She knew I couldn't afford it. She smiled anyway. I told myself it didn't matter. Self-sufficiency was its own kind of pride. Then senior year came. We applied to the same college, same major, accounting. When the acceptance letters arrived, we screamed in the kitchen like kids who didn't know any better. For a small second, it almost felt equal. That night, walking down the stairs, I heard Mom say, "We'll pay Hannah's tuition in full. Camille's clever. She'll figure something out. She always does." Dad agreed. "She's independent. She doesn't need as much help." Compliment dressed up as a sentence. I sat on the step for a long time with the light from the hallway spilling over my knees, hands shaking and jaw tight. I didn't confront them. What did I have to say they hadn't already decided? That I was tired of being the strong one, that I wanted to be someone's soft spot just once. I packed in silence that August and promised myself one thing. I would never ask them for money again. College split us clean. Hannah got a bright dorm on campus strung with fairy lights. I rented a cramped place off campus where the pipes moaned at dawn. She called home for book money. I took the night shift in the library to afford mine. She went to parties. I went to work. On my walk to the library, I'd pass her dorm and hear pop songs throbbing out of the windows. Girls singing about freedom with their arms around each other. Some mornings I caught her on the quad, sunlight landing in her hair like it had a favorite. She waved, "You look tired, Cam. You should manage your time better." I smiled, "Maybe you're right." The breaking point came near the first tuition deadline. I didn't call to beg, I called to ask if they could sign a small loan. I'd pay it back. The TV was on in the background. Someone was laughing. Mom waited until I finished my careful ask. "Camille," she said, steady. "We already paid for Hannah. She deserved it. You didn't." For a second, I felt every sound vanish. The TV, the hum in the line, the breath in my chest. I didn't deserve it. I repeated it, softer, as if saying it twice might dilute it. "You're strong," she added, like she was explaining the weather. "You'll figure it out, you always do." The line clicked. I stared at my reflection in the dorm window. The girl staring back didn't cry. Her eyes were dry, but I saw the lock slide into place behind them. The door shut, the quiet set. That night I went to the library early. I wiped tables, reshelved the same stack of books twice, organized returns by call number until my hands hurt. If they believed I didn't deserve help, fine. I'd prove I didn't need it. I would make them remember my name in a way they couldn't rewrite. By sunrise, I had a map, scholarships, internships, anything I could open with my own hands. No more waiting for approval I had never been offered. Mornings became my ally. I read financial analysis under my phone's dim flashlight before the building opened. I memorized ratios and standards until they felt like common sense. Exhaustion stopped being an enemy. It turned into a rhythm my body understood. That was when I met Professor McLaughlin, who taught international financial reporting standards to a half-empty lecture hall, and never seemed bothered by it. After class one afternoon, he stopped me in the hallway. "You seem to understand this better than most," he said. "Where did you study before?" "Nowhere special." I said. "I just read a lot." "That's rare," he said. "I need an assistant, organized, dependable, interested." I wanted to say no. I already worked nights. Sleep was a rumor, but something in me said yes. Maybe because for the first time in a long time, someone was looking at me without comparing me to Hannah. Working for him changed the air. He treated me like a colleague. I graded short quizzes, repaired spreadsheets, corrected a slide deck, and watched him notice. "You've got discipline," he told me once. "Keep going, it pays." It paid sooner than I expected. An email with a seal in the corner and a subject line that made my heart stop. Benjamin Ford National Scholarship. The committee invited a formal application based on a nomination from Professor McLaughlin. I stared at the screen and laughed, not loud but real. Someone had seen the shape of my work and bet on it. I told no one at home. I learned my good news was safest where it started. I wrote essays after my shift and fought a jammed printer at midnight and handed drafts to McLaughlin. He pushed my argument here, trimmed a paragraph there. When the results came 3 months later, I sat on my bed holding the letter like it might be something living, one of 5 national recipients. I said it out loud twice and then folded the paper with the care of someone tucking away a first dollar bill. Later I called home, habit. I got selected for a national scholarship. I said, "That's good, dear." My mother said. Hannah got invited to her professor's garden party. She's excited too. I nodded into the silence. We're both doing great then. When the call ended, I felt something loosen. I didn't feel small. I didn't even feel angry. It was quieter than that. I hung the letter on my wall above my desk, a reminder of what silence can build. 2 weeks later, I walked into a hall dressed in blue and gold. The awards ceremony felt like a rented spring day. Bright light and soft breeze. I arrived early with the invitation clenched so tightly the corners bent. The hall filled with them. I saw them come in, Mom in pearls, Dad straight, backed and searching for familiar ground. Hannah perfect in a dress that skimmed her knees, camera ready like she was here to capture someone else's story. I hadn't told them what kind of award it was. I wanted to see what they did with the truth when it was printed in a program and read into a microphone. The dean took the stage. Names, applause, the kind of words that float and mean nothing to anyone who isn't the one hearing them. Then the host, our next recipient, is an example of resilience, discipline, and independence. Without financial support from her family, she worked nights to fund her education. Her professors describe her as a force of quiet determination. Please welcome Camille Moore. The applause swelled. I stood without financial support from her family, cut across the room like glass. My mother's smile froze, my father blinked, Hannah's mouth parted and the camera dipped. I walked to the stage, heels clicking like punctuation. The dean shook my hand. "You've earned this," he said. "I know." I said quietly, the rest blurred. Congratulatory hands, business cards. Strangers saying my name like it suddenly had weight. I turned toward my family last. Mom reached first. "Honey, we had no idea it was this big. You wouldn't have come otherwise." I said, "Don't say that," she said. Her smile was tight now. "It's true." I said, still calm. "You told me Hannah deserved your help and I didn't. That was the best thing you ever did for me." Dad cleared his throat. "We thought you were capable." We didn't want to hold you back. By ignoring me, I asked, by confusing strength with not needing care. He looked away. Hannah clutched her purse. I didn't know, she said softly. I thought you got help too. You never asked why I worked 2 jobs while you were out. I said. She looked at the floor. I didn't want to see it. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for years. You don't have to apologize. I said. I didn't come for that. I came to make sure you heard my name from someone you couldn't talk over. An organizer touched my arm. Ms. Moore, representatives from Ford and Levine would like to speak with you. I smiled. Of course. I looked back once before I walked away. They were small in the crowd. For years I had lived as a shadow. Now they were the ones squinting in the light that wasn't theirs. The recruiters were warm and crisp. They talked base pay, mentorship tracks, options in the New York office. I nodded and felt something steady settle in my chest. Later outside, the courtyard glowed in the last of the sun. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. We're proud of you. Let's talk later. I typed, deleted, typed again, sent, thank you. I'm busy right now. When I looked back through the glass, they were gone. I walked the city that night with the award box thudding against my leg. By the time I reached my apartment, I could finally breathe. The next morning, the offer letter waited in my inbox. Junior Auditor, Ford and Levine, New York. I clicked accept. It felt like a door opening to a hallway that finally belonged to me. Mom texted again, come home this weekend, we'll celebrate properly. Maybe another time, I've got packing to do. On move out day I stood by the dorm window and watched families take photos. The laughter sounded bright and close and not meant for me. I didn't want it, I wanted quiet. I mailed a copy of the award letter to my parents. No note, in New York, I learned new versions of quiet. The city roared below the balcony of my small apartment. Inside, the sound dimmed to a steady hum. I set the award on a shelf and pinned the scholarship letter on a corkboard. Work began before I had time to worry if I belonged. Long audits and late closings. The office smelled like coffee and toner. I watched partners make decisions with a pen tap and learned where to sit in a meeting so my questions landed. I saw Hannah's life through social media frames. Garden parties, sorority reunions, brunches with glasses held high. She moved back home after graduation and took a bookkeeping role at a boutique home store. The captions were about hustle and self-care. The comments were hearts. Mom tagged her in everything. My name didn't appear. At first, I let it roll off. I had other problems. New York is not kind to the tired. I stumbled through tax seasons and grew precise out of necessity. My boss, Dawn, taught me to cut through noise. What matters is what's true. She said, you will never regret writing down what is true. She didn't know how clean a sentence like that felt to me. I kept telling myself my revenge was complete. The best revenge is success. The best closure is distance. I said it until it lost its taste. Then the first phone call came. It was a Tuesday late. I had 3 spreadsheets open and a cold sandwich half-eaten in the drawer. Mom's number lit up my screen. Hi, I said. Camille, your sister's car needs a repair, she said. We were wondering if you could help, just until she gets her next paycheck. There was no preface, no how are you, no we're sorry we handled things badly. Just the confidence of someone who has only ever been told yes. My mouth went dry. I could hear the old script climbing the stairs inside me. Be strong, be kind, be the bigger person. I pictured Hannah's highlights and the way she once tilted her head and told me to manage my time better. I can't, I said. Silence bloomed. Can't, Mom said, like the word offended physics. I'm not your bank. I said, you told me once Hannah deserved help and I didn't. I'm just keeping the rules you set. Mom exhaled, long and angry. I didn't call to argue. Then don't, I said, and ended the call before the part of me that still wanted their approval could reach for it. I didn't sleep much that night. I told myself it was the usual grind. But it wasn't. Something old woke up in the dark. It sat at the foot of the bed and looked at me with my mother's eyes. The second call came from Hannah. Hey, Cam, she said, voice bright and too casual. I miss you. "How's New York?" "Busy," I said. "I was thinking of visiting." She said, "Could I crash at your place? Hotels are crazy." The old script tried again. I swallowed it. "I don't have the space," I said. "Sorry," she laughed, then stopped when she realized I wasn't going to fill the silence for her. "Okay," she said flat. "Congrats on being too important for your own sister." When the call ended, I stared at the ceiling. I thought about success as revenge and quiet as power. It had worked. They felt the distance, but the cold inside me wasn't satisfied. It wanted something cleaner, something exact. I didn't want them to vanish. I wanted them to see. I wanted a ledger that balanced. That was the night the revenge shifted. It started small. I stopped ignoring Hannah's posts and started reading them. Not just the captions, the comments. The tags, the backgrounds, the faces. She posted a photo at a boutique opening with the owner. I looked up the business. It was organized as an LLC, new and eager. The books were probably messy. Hannah's bookkeeping job meant she touched transactions. My field meant I understood how to follow money without leaving fingerprints. I didn't plan anything illegal. I planned something precise. I sent an anonymous email to the boutique owner using a clean account and a coffee shop Wi-Fi. It was short and kind. A concerned community member noted a repeated rounding error in the sales tax reported on their public filings, which the Department of Taxation would flag if they audited. I included a link to a plain language guide on best practices. I never mentioned names. I never said bookkeeper. I didn't need to. The next day, the owner posted a story about tightening the ship. A week later, Hannah posted a photo of a latte captioned "Starting over." Her job had been restructured. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt a click, a cold alignment. Hannah texted me 2 days later. "Do you know any leads in accounting? You're connected now, right?" I stared at the message and thought about how the world had trained me to be useful. I typed, deleted, typed again. "There are entry roles at a third party payroll firm on 31st. I wrote, "Hourly, not glamorous, but it's honest work. Apply." She sent a thumbs up, "No thank you." At work, Dawn noticed I was sharper. My reviews were clean. My questions landed. "You're learning to zoom out and in," she said. "That's rare." I was learning something else. I was learning that I could move a person's life by tugging at the threads around them, and no one would know my hand was there. I told myself I was just balancing old books. I told myself I was enforcing fairness. I told myself a lot of things. A month later, Hannah posted an engagement photo. The ring was modest. The groom was a man named Tyler who ran a small franchise gym. The caption was long and sweet and tagged both of my parents. No one tagged me. I clicked through his business website and saw free classes advertised that were not aligned with franchise policy. I read the franchise agreement template. I learned the word termination for cause. I checked public court dockets and saw his location had been late on franchise fees twice. I did not sleep that night, but I did not feel tired. I sent one email to the franchise compliance team with links to his own promotional posts that violated the agreement. No commentary, just receipts. 2 weeks later, Hannah posted a tearful story about unfair corporate pressure. The comments called corporations heartless. I closed the app and made tea and stared at nothing. I told myself I was protecting future clients and consumers. I told myself I believed in standards. I told myself that if you draw the wrong numbers, the math corrects you. It sounded almost noble when I said it out loud. Mom called the next day. "Your sister's having a hard time," she said. "I don't know what's happening. She was doing so well. She'll figure it out." I said. "She always does." Silence, then a cut. "You don't have to be cruel." "I'm not." I said. "I'm busy." That night, I dreamed I was back on the graduation stage, only the rooms were empty and the applause was a recording. I woke with my heart racing and sat on the bathroom floor until it passed. My hands shook when I brushed my teeth. At work, I became the person people trusted with sensitive parts of the audit. I kept things in order. I wrote memos that read like clean glass. Dawn promoted me to senior. The raise made my hands steady again. On a visit home that fall for a client meeting in the region, I drove past our old house. The shutters had faded. The lawn had edges of brown. For a second, it almost looked like the house I grew up in had aged in fast forward while I wasn't looking. I parked 2 streets away and walked the long way to our block. Hannah's car wasn't in the driveway. Mom's hydrangeas had gone wild. I stood across the street and watched a curtain stray open and a familiar silhouette cross the living room and straighten a stack of magazines that didn't matter. I turned and left before I could knock. Hannah texted the next week, "Can we talk?" On the phone, I wrote, "I'd rather in person." She said, "No." She sent a location to a coffee shop in Midtown. I stared at the pin until the map blurred. Then I went. She arrived 5 minutes late. Her eyes were shadowed, but she was still careful about how she sat, like posture could fix what life had pulled out of place. "I'm not here to fight," she said. "Okay," I said. She took a breath. "I've been thinking about us, about how we grew up. I was the favorite. I know that now. I think I always knew, but I liked it. I didn't want to see the cost. I'm sorry. The apology I used to want landed like paper on a wet table. It couldn't hold anything. I watched her and tried to feel the ache I used to carry. It wasn't there. In its place was a strange emptiness that felt dangerously like power. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. She nodded and rushed on. "I also need help. I got laid off. Tyler lost his franchise. We're okay for now, but we might move back in with Mom and Dad. I thought maybe you had a lead, or if I could stay with you for a while, just until I get my feet back." I looked at her fingers. She twisted the ring. I thought about the girl who once told me to manage my time better while my hands bled from cleaners. I thought about the night I made her job evaporate with a message typed in a borrowed network. I thought about the rules I told myself I was following. Fairness, standards, balance. I can't. I said, "There's a payroll firm on 31st. They hire fast. You will not like it. You should still do it." She stared. "You're different, I know." I said, "Do you hate me?" She asked. I considered the question. Hate is a flare. It burns bright and fast. What I felt now was colder and patient. It was what I imagine the ocean feels for a rock it has been smoothing for years. "No," I said, "I don't hate you." She exhaled and looked like she might cry. Instead she nodded. "Okay," she said and left. I didn't move for a while. The coffee went cold. When I finally stood, I felt steady, and then, a second later, a wave of nausea that sent me to the bathroom. I sat on a closed toilet and closed my eyes and tried to breathe through a sudden tremor that started in my hands and moved up my arms. When it passed, I splashed water on my face and saw the look in my eyes and didn't recognize it. At night, I started cataloging things. It wasn't a decision. It was a compulsion that arrived like a new habit. I saved screenshots. I kept notes. I scanned for weaknesses the way some people scan for typos. I watched Hannah's life the way an auditor watches cash flow. I told myself I would stop when the books balanced. They didn't. When Hannah finally landed a receptionist job at a dental clinic, I felt the smallest bit of relief, and then the old hunger again. The clinic had sloppy HIPAA training based on a photo the office posted of a whiteboard with appointment initials visible. I sent an anonymous tip with the photo to the practice manager and a link to a healthcare compliance site. The post came down. The manager wrote a staff memo about privacy. Hannah posted a story that night that said, "Work is stressful." I slept 2 hours and woke to my heartbeat in my throat. I sat on the kitchen floor and watched the stove clock creep toward morning. I couldn't tell if I felt satisfied or sick. At my year-end review, Dawn said, "You're brilliant and you're burning yourself down. Take 2 days off, no laptop, I mean it." I took the days. The laptop stayed shut. My mind did not. That weekend, Mom left a voicemail. "Your sister is getting married next spring." She said, "We hope you'll come." I played it twice. I pictured the church and Hannah in a simple dress and Dad crying and Mom arranging flowers and looking like the mother I sometimes still wanted. I pictured myself in the second pew doing nothing. The quiet inside me snarled. I found the venue's vendor list through a tagged post and noticed the caterer had 2 health code violations in the past year. I sent a polite note to the venue manager about the risk to guests. They switched caterers. Hannah posted a story about another unexpected cost. Tyler posted a defensive reel about haters. I closed the app and stared at the wall until the daylight moved an inch. That night I dreamed I was balancing a ledger with lines that kept multiplying. The more I corrected, the more they appeared. When I woke, my jaw ached from clenching it. 2 weeks later, an email arrived at work. A nonprofit I admired needed pro bono help remediating internal controls. Dawn asked if I wanted it. I said yes before she finished the sentence. It felt like a way to balance the scale somewhere that mattered. The nonprofit was small and earnest. They served real people and counted real dollars like they were sacred, which is the way you should count dollars when they represent food and rent. I lost myself in their files and built processes that made sense and trained staff who cared. It felt like oxygen after months of static. On my way out one evening, I saw a familiar last name on a donor list, not my parents', Tyler's. His old gym had held a fundraiser and the check bounced. The nonprofit had waived it as a courtesy because the intent was good. I stared at the bounced amount, a small number in the scheme of things and still a lot to a clinic that fed families. I felt the cold part of me uncoil like a snake. I could make a phone call. I could recover the donation. I could do good and also hurt the man marrying my sister. I told myself those things did not have to be the same. I told myself I was cleaning a mess. I drafted a letter on the nonprofit's behalf that was firm and kind and legally sound. I called the franchise parent company about community commitments on paper, and I CC'd a regional manager. I never raised my voice. I never lied. 2 weeks later, a cashier's check arrived. The nonprofit director cried and hugged me. "You're a miracle," she said. I smiled and felt nothing. That night, I stared at the ceiling until dawn.